Steve here. To really understand the market we trade in today, sometimes you have to look back, way back. Today we're going to talk about the decade that really invented the modern retail investor, the 1950s. It was a time that blew the doors off the old Wall Street private club and turned the stock market into an engine for everyday people.
This quote, well, it really nails it. After World War II, something just fundamentally changed in the American psyche. It wasn't just about the economy, it was about who got to participate in it. We're going to dig into exactly how that engine got fired up.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the incredible post-war boom that set the whole stage. Then we'll get into the mutual fund, the financial tool that changed everything. After that, the brilliant campaign that sold the American dream, one share at a time. And finally, we'll talk about what all this means for us right now.
All right, let's paint a picture. It's the early 1950s. The war is over, and America is basically the only major industrial nation left standing. We weren't just a factory, we were the factory for the entire world.
And just look at this number, 50%. The United States was pumping out half of all the manufactured goods on the planet. Cars, televisions, refrigerators, you name it, we were building it. The scale of that economic power is it's hard to even wrap your head around today.
And all that work created something truly new, widespread prosperity. Suddenly, the guy on the assembly line had a little extra cash in his pocket. For the first time, families had real disposable income. They were buying those new houses in the suburbs, and they started thinking, okay, what do I do with this money? How do I make it grow?
But here was the problem, a huge one. The memory of the '29 crash wasn't just some story in a history book. It was a fresh wound. For that whole generation, Wall Street wasn't a place for smart investing. It was a crooked casino that had absolutely wrecked their parents' lives.
So you've got a whole new class of people with money to invest, but they're terrified of the market. How do you solve that? Well, you invent a new tool, something that feels safe, something that feels responsible. And that tool was the mutual fund.
The idea itself was just brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of you trying to find that one needle in a haystack, that one perfect stock, you could just buy a tiny piece of the whole haystack, all of it, professionally managed. It was the key that unlocked the whole thing for the little guy. And look how simple it was. A plumber from Ohio, a teacher from California, a baker from Florida, they could all put their money together. And in an instant, they weren't just investors, they were owners of a piece of AT&T, of Sears, of Standard Oil. They hired professionals to do the hard work for them.
And the way they sold it was genius. It wasn't some complicated financial jargon, it was common sense. It was the kind of wisdom your grandfather would give you. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's it. It took this big, scary idea and made it feel safe and familiar. And this is the most important part. The mutual fund changed the entire psychology of the market. It shifted investing from being seen as reckless gambling to being seen as smart, long-term planning. Suddenly, buying stocks was part of building a future, saving for retirement, for your kids' college. It was the responsible thing to do.
Okay, so the perfect tool was there. But the American public, they still needed an invitation to the party. They needed someone to tell them it was okay to come in. This is the story of the man and the campaign that connected Main Street to Wall Street. And that man was Keith Funston. He was the head of the New York Stock Exchange, and he had a vision. He saw this new, rising middle class and realized they weren't just a source of money. They were the future, and he knew he had to sell them on the idea of ownership itself. And what a slogan. Just listen to it. Own your share of American business. This wasn't just about making money. This was an appeal to patriotism. It framed buying a stock as doing your part, as believing in the country. You weren't just buying a ticker symbol, you were buying a piece of the American dream. Funston's plan was massive. It was cultural. He wanted every American to feel like a capitalist, to have skin in the game. Because if you owned the companies, you'd support the whole system. And it worked. Pretty soon, people were checking their stock prices on the evening news like they checked the weather. To make it all feel real and safe, the campaign focused on the biggest, most trusted blue-chip companies out there, the Nifty 50. These were the household names, the brands people knew and used every day. And these stocks became the bedrock of the very first retirement portfolios for millions of middle-class families.
So why does any of this history matter to us now, here on Wednesday, March 11th, 2026? Because the very foundation of the world we invest in today was poured back in that incredible decade. So let's reflect on that legacy.
Here it is, the single most important takeaway. The buy and hold strategy that so many of us grew up with, it wasn't born out of some timeless financial wisdom. It was born in the 1950s, a product of a unique time of seemingly endless, one-way American growth. And that's the critical difference we have to understand. The 1950s market existed in a bubble, where America had almost no real competition. The world we're trading in today, it's a completely different animal. It's global, it's instant, and it is relentlessly, brutally competitive.
So, that brings us to the big question for every single one of us. Is it realistic to think that the simple, straightforward strategies that worked for our grandparents can still deliver in a world where that post-war economic dominance is a distant memory?
The 1950s opened the door for the average Joe by making investing simple. The question we have to ask ourselves now is whether the sheer complexity of today's global market means the game is shifting back into the hands of the pros. Something to think about. Value your history. I'll see you at the open.